Hi everyone, in this video we're going to take a quick look at some basic UV template systems. A UV template is a system that allows us to place an image onto the surface of a model with a high degree of accuracy. Essentially it lets us place things like logos, text, symbols, and just general coloration onto our models specifically. So it's really good for applying those kind of textures to anything from a character model where we can place things like textures for the eye or even skin, things like tattoos and so on, all the way through to vehicles. We can place logos on aircraft, pretty much anything. So basically, to give you a basic idea of what we're talking about here, I've got this render of these phones, and you can see we've got like these little logos and so on. They're produced basically in Photoshop as a picture that looks a bit like this. Okay, this is the actual texture that's been applied onto this phone. It's actually one of two textures that's been applied. But you can see, like up here on the front of the phone, we've got this little camera lens just here. That's actually just here on the texture. All right, we've got the little button here at the bottom with this little square printed icon. That's this square just here. And then obviously we've got like the logos and so on that appear on the back of the casing. So in order to get this image placed onto the object, we use what's called a UV template. And that's what this image is. This is an exported image of the UV template from Maya for this phone object. Essentially what it is the 3D object cut apart into sort of its main pieces and then flattened out and kind of arranged into a square region. So we can see here, this is sort of the back of the body of the object, sort of this section here. You can see the little areas for the camera and flash up here. This is the front. This is sort of like the inner front of the object. Sort of this section here on the front. This is the actual front plate, which incorporates this little recessed area for the earpiece just here, and also the button here at the bottom, which is just here, and also a clear region for the screen as well. So this object actually has two types of materials added to the one object. A clear material, kind of like a clear glass or plastic, for the screen, and then a black opaque plasticky coating for the rest of the panel. Then we've got a kind of a bunch of assorted lenses and little flash objects for the cameras and so on embedded in the back of the phone. So basically this is sort of this object pulled apart and then kind of laid out and arranged like this into this format. So what we do is actually build this up in Maya and then export it out as one of these images, like this. Then what we do is we open that up in Photoshop and we paint over the top of it, so we end up with something like this. And essentially all we're doing is saying, okay, well that's the back of the phone, for example, and I want that to be yellow. So I paint all of that region yellow. Okay, and then I say, well, I want the main front screen section to be black, so I make sure that that region is all black, and so on and so forth. You basically build your texture up as you would any other image in Photoshop. All right. Then what we do is we take this image, this finished texture, and we load it into the material in that's applied onto the object in Maya, and it will then color the object. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at sort of the basic system that allows us to produce these templates. Now it's not going to be an object as complex as this. We'll just use like a little basic cube type object just to keep it easy. All right, so I'm just going to create like a basic little shape here. Okay, just a polygon cube, which you can see here. I'll just hit number 5 to get to a more solid view. And I might just kind of randomize the shape a little bit. I'll add some divisions just so I can kind of change the shape a little bit. So what I might do here is actually, whoops, don't want to do that. Let's just grab a couple of polys. So I might just grab those polygons and I'll just extrude these up. So I kind of end up with this weird sort of shape here. And I think what I'll do is try and fix that kind of twist. This twisted polygon here might cause some issues, so I'm just going to pop that down. So essentially what we've got is something that looks a bit like that. And over here in the side view, I might just clean that up a little bit. Let's try and level out that polygon somewhat. About there. Okay. So what we'll do is create a UV template of this. Okay, so what we'll need to do is actually open up our UV texture editor, and that's the panel that allows us to create and edit UV templates. I'll just delete the history on this as well. All right, so to get to your UV texture editor, you have a couple of options. You can go to the Polygon Shelf tab and move across to this icon just here, UV texture editor, and that'll open the editor up as a floating window like this. You can also set your menu set drop down here to polygons, and then access this panel from Edit UV's UV Texture Editor just here. So this menu entry is the same as this icon. Okay, generally speaking, the way I tend to use this panel is not as a floating window. I like to actually have it as a second viewport. So I have like basically a split screen with one viewport here and one viewport here. To do that, what you do is you go across to the presets for your interface and just choose one that has two side-by-side viewports. So for me, I tend to go Perspective Outliner because it loads very quickly. You could also use the Hypershade perspective, but that sometimes takes a little while for the Hypershade to completely load up. So the outliner is a lot quicker. From here, what we do is change the outliner to the UV Texture Editor by going to Panels, Panel, UV Texture Editor, and that'll set this up as a viewport. This can be helpful if you're running a Mac. Sometimes if you're using the floating window texture editor, it will actually get stuck behind the main window, and then it's difficult to bring it forward again. So I tend to use this setup definitely when I'm working on a Mac. Alright, so I've got my perspective view, which is a 3D universe, 3D viewport. Okay, and I've got my UV texture editor, which is a 2D viewport. Okay, now this isn't a 2D viewport in the same way that the top, front, and side viewports are, that you can sometimes view with your 4 viewport split screen mode. Okay, those are actually viewports looking at a 3D, this 3D space, but just from a single direction. This is a true 3D viewport, a true 2D viewport. It has two axes, U, which is horizontal this way, and V, which is vertical, which is obviously up and down. And you can see those two axes with these color-coded lines just here. Note that they've got them color-coded the same way as the X and Y axes in your 3D viewport. They're not the same axes, okay? Unfortunately, they don't put a little V and a little U here. So you just need to remember that this is 2D, U and V, and this is 3D, X, Y, and Z. All right, they're not interchangeable. Okay, so let's have a look at what this thing does. If you have nothing selected, you will get nothing appearing except for the grid. If you select an object, it will then display the template for that object, the UV template for that object, in generally the upper right corner of this grid, which you can see here. Every object in Maya that you create using polygons will have an associated UV template for it or attached to it. And by default, this shape is the shape you get when you use a cube, a polygon cube object. All right. If I create another polygon cube, just as a little example, like that. Now I might make this really long. You can see there I get basically the exact same shape. Now note that this template does not represent the same kind of proportions as this object. So no matter what kind of box you make, you always end up with this exact same template to begin with. And that's, really part of the reason we need to actually create a new template for our objects, is because these templates are completely the wrong shape and they don't represent the actual volume of this object or the proportions of this object. Okay, so just be aware that you always end up with a template for your objects. Different shapes have different types of templates. A spherical shape, a sphere in this case, will give you a template that looks like this. Essentially, the triangles along the top and the bottom are the triangles at the poles of your sphere. So we get these little triangles here. So these triangles here are these triangles here. Likewise at the bottom. Now note that these polygons up here are almost square, but the ones around the equator of the sphere here are rectangular. However, the same polygons in here are actually square. So it's stretching, it's actually compressing these polygons. The polygons towards the top and bottom are actually stretched bigger than they are, and the polygons in the middle are squashed down to, in some cases, more than half or less than half their actual size. And what this does is tends to cause distortion in your textures when you see them on the objects. Okay, the cone, let's have a look at this. So with the cone, you essentially get that shape. Once again, that's actually not technically correct compared to this object. Okay, the sphere at the bottom is pretty much just, or the circle at the bottom is basically what you see on the object, but these triangles are not actually shaped like this. Technically, to get this shape flattened out, you would have to make more of a fan shape, so it would be kind of triangular with a rounded bottom. So you can see there, there's actually some issues with these default templates, which is why you don't use the default templates. You actually edit them and customize them for your object. So let's take a look at how we can create a template for this object. We've got 4 different basic projection modes, and we'll find those under the Create UVs menu just up the top here. I'm going to snap this off so we can refer to it. We have planar mapping, which is used for flat surfaces. Okay, now this could be a completely flat object, for example a polygon plane, which obviously is just a flat panel, in this case a single polygon. So planar mapping would be perfect for this. But we can also use planar mapping for flat surfaces of an entire or of a larger object. So for example, this cube shape that I've got is actually made up of a series of planar sides. So this section here is actually one plane. Okay, that's a flat surface. And you could also include this polygon in that as well, because it's basically facing in the same direction that these are. It's sort of parallel to them. Okay, that's another one just there. So you can see that kind of forms one kind of panel. We've got another one here, which is these 4. Another one at the top here, those 2. This side obviously is another plane. We then have these ones here, and we have these ones here, like this. Now this one here is at a completely different angle to everything else on the object, so that basically becomes its own plane, essentially. And you can see here I've got this polygon selected, and it's actually showing me where it's selected here. I'm getting this blue tint by having this button here active. Normally what you would get with your object is like a white wireframe like this. If you press this button just here, you will end up shading it in. Okay, so let's actually create a template for this. So as I said, we're going to use planar mapping for this because they are essentially flat sides. Now, what I could do is just take this object and hit planar mapping. We'll go to the options for this. So if I did planar mapping from, let's have a look down the Z-axis here. So if I change this to Z, make sure I've got keep image width height ratio ticked to stop the template from stretching. If I hit apply, you can see there essentially what it's doing is it's looking along the Z-axis, which is this direction. So it's actually doing it from this side. So it's actually looking down this direction, and then it's you can kind of imagine this as having, it's kind of like taking a photo of the object from this direction. Okay, so it's ignoring everything that's behind, or it's actually squashing the object in this direction. So all of these parts behind are actually in here, but we can't see them because they're actually squashed along the edges here. So what we're seeing essentially is this. Okay, if I do the y-axis, so I'll just reselect the object again. If I set this to y-axis and hit apply, what we're going to see is the object from the top. So we're projecting from the top, like this. So once again, the whole object is here, but the polygons underneath are basically flattened up underneath the ones at the top, like this. So that's what we're seeing. So what we don't necessarily want to do it this way. The reason for that is that when we create our texture and we load it on, basically what will happen is we'll see it clearly from this direction, and we'll see it clearly from the opposite direction. But from the sides or the front, what we would see is streaks, depending on what the texture was. It would just be kind of all weird and streaky, which we don't necessarily want. So what we need to do is basically project this object from different sides, from each direction, in fact. So to do that, what we can do is, let me just undo this. I'll get back to sort of where we were. There we go. So what we can do, basically start off by selecting polygons from a single direction. So let's do this side. And I need to work out which direction I'm looking along. So I have a look down here, and I can see that I'm looking along the Z axis here. So I set this to Z, and all I do is hit apply. And you can see over here what's happening is I can drag this little handle here. Basically what it's doing, it's kind of like taking an image of this side of the object, and it's flattened it out into 2D space. So I can kind of plonk that there. Now you'll note over here, part of this is missing now. This piece that's missing is actually this. So it's taken these parts from here, reshaped them to match this. So now I do the other side. So I'm going to grab that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Now I'm not going to do this one because that's got its own, it's sort of on its own unique angle. I'm going to do that one a bit differently. So I'm going to project that, so I'll hit apply and bring this out. And now you can see that I've got this little gap missing. That's where that polygon was. Okay, we didn't project that. But basically you can see that it's actually the opposite way around. So it's not actually, it doesn't actually look the same as this. It's like a mirror image. When these are shaded red like this, don't forget this is this little toggle box here, this little toggle button. When they're shaded red, it means you're actually looking at the inside of the polygons. So this is essentially flipped backwards. So what I'm going to do is right click and select UV mode, and then I'll drag a box just across those parts. So you can see these little UV dots. A UV point is a little bit like a vertex, except it's used in UV space. You can move them around using the move tool like this. You can rotate them, and you can scale them the same way that you would with vertices or polygons or edges, except they can only be edited in the UV template. All right. Notice that even though they're selected and they're visibly selected over here, we can see the little green dots. The handle for the move, scale, or rotate tool only appears in the UV editor because they are UV points. If you wanted to rotate, scale, move the points over here, you would have to select them as vertices. Okay. And likewise, vertices can only be edited over here, not in the UV template. Alright, so what I can do here is, with these selected, I can use this flip button. Flip selected UVs along the U direction, so that's horizontally. So if I click that, you can see it flips around, and it's now blue, so it matches the other piece down here. So I can just kind of move these around, pop them around like this. Alright, so all we do is we keep doing the same thing for each side of the object. So I'll pop round to the bottom, and I'll select the polygons I can see from the bottom, like that. And this time I need to double check that the axis is set. I'm looking along the y-axis now, so I'll select Y, and I'll hit apply. And that'll pop up there. So once again, it's red, so I'm actually looking at it, these polygons from the wrong direction. So I'll right click and select UV mode, select them all, and then flip, like that. Now technically I could flip them vertically, okay? pretty much ends up being the same thing. Okay, so let's do the top. So I'm going to select face mode. Now for the top here, I'm actually going to just do these two. Even though I can see most of the, obviously these polygons from the top, because they're on an angle, if I project them directly down from the top, the projection will actually end up slightly shorter than these polygons really are. And that'll cause the texture that would be on here to stretch a bit. So I'm going to actually project them individually, or sort of just those two as a single position or a single point. So I'm just going to project those from the y-axis like that, and that produces that. Pretty straightforward. I've done the bottom already. I need to do the front. So I'm going to grab the polygons from the front. Once again, this one's sort of on its own angle. Although it's probably more vertical, it would probably be okay to project. I just want to sort of definitely get them all projected properly. So I'm just going to grab those. This time it says Z. Oops, it's actually the x-axis I'm looking at here. So we'll hit apply. Just bring that down. And really, I'm just kind of placing these anywhere there's this bare bit of room. Okay, we're going to modify this in a minute anyway. Okay, and we'll grab the back. So it's going to be these two and these four. And same axis again, so I'll just apply that. But they're going to be flipped, so I'll just right click, select UV, just drag a box around them, flip them, like that. And now I've kind of got these random ones. All right. So I'm going to start off with this top piece because they're pretty easy to get to. And this is sort of where it becomes a little tricky because I'm going to use a different mapping system just here. So when you've got these randomly angled polygons that aren't actually parallel to the grid, so either not parallel to or not at 90 degrees to, they're on kind of weird angles, you can actually use a system called Best Plane Texturing Tool. What this does is allows you to define the plane or the angle that these are actually sitting on. So the way this works is we select the polygons, we hit Best Plane Texturing Tool. It tells us in the middle, I'll just hit that again, it says select faces to map, then press enter. So I've got my faces selected, so I press enter on the keyboard. It then says to define projection plane, select 3 or more vertices. To finish, press enter. So what I do, I right click and I select vertex, and basically what I want to do is select 3 vertices around the selection. So I'm going to select here, and I'm holding down shift at the moment. I'll select here and here. Okay, now if I want, I could select there as well. Okay, as long as you've got at least 3. 3 will basically give you, it's kind of like triangulation. 3 points selected basically enables you to work out the average angle that those 3 points are facing in, and that gives you the direction that the polygon is facing, and that's what you need to project along. Okay, so once I've got those selected, I'll press enter. And up here, you can see it's projected those polygons. So this is now a projected panel, okay, that's at actual size or sort of actual proportions. It's not stretched. And that's good because it means that my texture on there won't stretch. It won't deform or be distorted. So I can grab that and move that over now. And I'll just flip it. Now you can see in there, it's actually picked up an extra polygon. There was an actual extra little polygon in there selected. I don't know which one that is. Might be that one. Yes, it is. It's this one. So I've just hit face mode, selected that. I'm then going to right click and go UV mode, and because that's the only one selected, I can drag a box across it and it will just select that piece. Okay, now you can see there I'm moving this and it's actually physically connected onto here, and this one isn't, strangely enough. Okay, now I'm finding on occasion this tends to kind of play up a little bit. You'll also find with this texture editor, when you're using this, especially on the Macintosh systems, it becomes really unstable and your system will crash a lot. So you'll have to make sure when you're using this panel that you save a lot. You probably want to save every couple of minutes, I would suggest. It becomes unstable. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to remap this polygon now, and it'll separate it off here. So I'm going to use the same tool I just used, which is best plane texturing. So I'm going to click that. Okay, so I have to click enter, and then I have to select the vertices. Now in this case, I'm just selecting the vertices around the actual triangle. Those are the only vertices I can select. Press enter again, and you can see that it's done this. Now what's occurring here shouldn't actually be occurring. This is actually an error that's occurring. Basically, this should not be kind of stretching with this object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that. Basically, the position that's causing the problem is this UV point just here. So what I'm going to do is right click, select UV, drag a box around that, and I'm going to come up here to this little cut tool. It says separate UVs on the selected edges. You can also use this one, separate selected UV into one for each connected edge. So I'm going to click that. If I grab my move UV shell tool and I select this, now this definitely should not be occurring. Okay, so there's definitely a problem here. This triangle should separate. Note that with this tool selected, there is nothing, none of these points are highlighted. So technically this should actually come off as a separate piece. So I'm getting some form of glitch here. What I might try doing is deleting the history. You can see here I'm getting all these UV tweaks and so on. What I need to do is delete this history. So I'll go edit, delete by type, history. This might fix it. It might not. So let's try that again. I'm going to grab all 3 UVs associated with that that object, and I'll separate them out. We'll see if that works. Still not working. Okay, let's try edges. I'm going to select all those edges, and I'll hit separate, this separate tool. See if that does it. Nope, still not. Okay, so there's some form of error with this object. Basically, this should not be sticking the way that it is. Okay, so in this case, what I might have to do is actually rebuild this polygon. So I'm going to delete it off the object. Okay, and then what I can do is with my mesh tool, I can just go fill hole, and that'll create a new polygon. Now you can see there, it's actually added it in and joining it in between all the UVs, all the vertices that it was connected to. So what I need to do now is template that one again. I might try just a regular planar map first, and I'll go from the y-axis just really to separate it out. So I'll just hit apply. You can see now that this is separated out from everything else. Okay, it's not connected anymore. So I've actually physically broken that connection. Now what I need to do is recreate the template so that the object isn't distorted anymore. So I'm going to use the best plane texturing tool again, see if it actually functions this time. I'll press enter, then select my vertices, and then press enter again. And now we've got this corner templated and finally separated off the rest of the object. So this polygon is now at actual proportions, or at the proper aspect ratio. I need to rejoin these two up here because they are a single panel basically. So what I'm going to do with this is select edge mode, and I'll select that edge, and you can see the corresponding edge here selects. And what I want to do is use move and sew selected edges, and that basically will snap them together and they'll connect. All right, I've got a couple more polygons to go, thankfully. So I've got these UVs here, and that's essentially this polygon here at the front. So I'll select face mode like this, and once again I'm going to do best plane texturing tool because this polygon's on a strange angle. So I'll go best plane texturing tool, press enter, select vertex mode, and I'll select the vertices around the object or around the selection. Press enter. Here we go. So that's essentially the entire object separated and flattened out. Now what I need to do is take all of these pieces and arrange them inside the upper right corner of the grid so that they're all sort of evenly scaled. and arranged nice and neatly. So generally speaking, what we would do to do this is we would usually just grab object mode, delete the history. Oops, delete the history. So I go edit, delete by type, history. Okay, and that just locks all of that in. I'm going to just delete that extra plane that I have. All right, so basically what we want to do is try and get everything the right size. So usually what I do is right click, go to assign favorite material. You can just use Lambert if you want. And then when this pops up, go to color, click on here, and just select checker like this. Now what you'll have to do in your perspective view is press 6 or click the little textured button, and it'll show the texture up on the object like this. So you can see some of these panels have bigger squares than others. So these ones here are pretty small compared with these. In fact, these ones are almost half the size of these. Okay, so what that means is when polygons are, when the squares are smaller, it means those polygons on the template are too big. All right. So for example, these two polygons here are these two. Okay, I can select those. You can see that they highlight. These two polygons basically should be the same size as these two, which are sort of here. So these are actually twice the size, almost. So what we do is grab UV mode, just select a section, and then just use the scale tool. And you scale them down until the polygon, the texture on the polygons here are the same size. And you can use the move tool and you can move them around to kind of get a bit of a better idea of you know, how close the scale is. So that's pretty close. They're roughly about the same size. So that means these two sections are in proportion to one another, give or take. Okay, it doesn't have to be absolutely exact. All right. Now these two are going to be the same size because they're roughly the same proportions. This one up here is going to be way too big. So just grab UV mode. So don't forget, this is all done in UV mode. Just grab scale. Now this one's going to be too big. So when the texture is small, it means the object is big. All right. So it's kind of like reverses. It's kind of backwards. So you've just got to kind of get used to sort of identifying if it's too big or too small. So once again, you can kind of just adjust back and forth. So this needs to be slightly smaller again. So it's about there roughly. So you can see now the width of the black squares on here is roughly the same size as the width up here. Okay, and that's just rough. Okay, so that section there, that's this panel on the front. So those are really, really too big. So just scale that down till the texture is about the right size. So maybe about there. And then this one here, same thing again. So they're really tiny. So that means that polygon's really, really big. And once again, just use the move tool. Just you know, try and align the edges on the texture. So you can see there, that's still too big. Oops. So it's going to be roughly about there. Okay, something like that. So you can see there, they're all basically the same size now across the whole object. So that means all of these pieces are the right size compared with one another. Now what we do is we arrange all of these into a square, roughly a square pattern. And then what we do is move all of that and scale it all down together to fit into here. So all I'm doing is sort of arranging. Oops, now you've got to be careful not to have any extra UV selected when you're moving things. And this is kind of like playing Tetris, quite frankly. What you want to try and do is arrange everything so that it's all kind of locked together as closely as possible. The closer you can get these objects to one another without them overlapping, the more efficient your UV space is. Basically, it means you're going to have more pixels per each of these regions to play with on your texture. Okay, so I might pop that one in there. And then these two I'll bring sort of down here. Now it's not a very complex object, obviously, so it means that I'm not going to be able to fill the entire square up. There aren't as many parts. But, you know, this is sort of reasonable. And it's only a basic example anyway. Now, if you go into your tool settings, all right, you've got this retain component spacing for your move tool when you're using the UV texture editor. This by default's turned off. And the problem with that, what I want to do here is kind of snap this to the middle of the grid. And if I turn grid snap on, and this is switched off by default, if I move this, you can see the whole thing collapses down to 1 point, which obviously is no good. So what you need to do is turn this on, and then you can actually snap your whole selection to the grid, like that. So I'm just going to go to scale, and I'm going to scale that down. So what we want to do basically is fit this to the middle of the grid, like that. We want to have all of these objects. Don't forget to turn grid snap off when you're not using it. Basically what we need to do is get all of these objects so they're inside the grid, but they're as big as possible without overlapping one another. So it's a real kind of puzzle to be able to do that. So this one here, you can see down here, we're just inside the grid. We're just inside here, and we've got a little gap here. Now over here, you can see that's sticking out a little bit, so I need to fix that one. So basically when you're doing this, you can't have parts sticking out of this grid, and that's the upper right corner of the grid, all right? It's not the whole grid as a whole. You can't have things overlapping the upper right-hand corner. So with this one, I'd have to bring that down like that. You also don't want to have parts overlapping each other like this. All right, there are circumstances where you can do that, but basically you need to be aware that if you overlap things like this, the areas that overlap one another on the template will actually end up receiving the same part of the texture image. So what it means is the texture that should be on this piece, part of it will end up on this piece, on the model, even though these two pieces could be on completely opposite ends of the model themselves in the 3D viewport. They end up with the same texture, so it will look like an error on your model. So what we're doing here is just kind of making sure we've got a bit of a gap around all of those. All right, so then basically what we do is we make sure we delete the history. Changing the UV, creating the UV template will create a history. If you don't delete the history and you animate this model, for example, it can actually scramble your template up and then your texture won't work anymore. So you have to delete the history when you finish with your template. I don't have a history, but just to show you again, you go Edit, Delete by Type History, and it'll empty out any inputs. I'm going to freeze the transformations over here as well. I'll just go Freeze All, and that'll just zero that out. That was with the right-click menu as well. You can also just select the object and go Modify Freeze Transformations. All right, so the next step is to export this out as an image. So we right-click and select UV Mode, select everything, go to Polygons, UV Snapshot. From here, you can see it'll go into your Images folder if you've got your project folder selected properly. So it'll go to Images, and it always calls it out UV. What you need to do is rename this. I'm just going to call this Demo. Demo Temp. So usually what I'll do is put capital TEMP at the end, temp, short for template. So I know it's a template image. Just hit Enter. You can set the size. Generally what you want to do is keep the size to a multiple of 256 or 128. So it could be 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, 4096, and so on. Basically, it's a power of 2 number. And that's predominantly the way that it's always done. Essentially, it makes your memory allocation, by all accounts, it'll make your memory allocation more efficient on your computer when it's dealing with that. Yeah, just generally that's the rule of thumb. Color value you can keep, you can set that to whatever you want, quite frankly. I might try it black this time. This is just a test for myself. You then have to set the image format. Usually I would keep that white, but I'll see what happens. Image format, usually I'll use a JPEG or a PNG. I'm going to set PNG for this, especially because I've just set that color to black. The background of the image usually will be black, so setting that, if you set that and set it to JPEG, you might end up with just a black image. So to be on the safe side, usually you'd set that to white. So when you've done that, just hit OK. And what that will do is export an image of this into your images folder in your project folder, which I'll bring up in a second when I find it. Whoops, in my folders. Here we go. So here's my project folder. Okay, and I've got my images folder just here, and there's the template just there, demo temp. So let's just pop that open. So you can see there that I've got this nice clear black and white image. This is another one I did as a quick test, and that was with the line set to white, and you'll notice that they're actually harder to see between the two. Like I said, with a JPEG, you might find that the whole background goes black and you end up with white lines. So, you know, test it, see how it goes. You can kind of try that yourself. Okay, I'm going to leave this video here because it's been a very, very long video. I'll do a secondary follow-up to this video. So in the next part, what I'll do is put this in Photoshop, and I'll just add a couple of basic things onto this template to give you an idea of sort of how the texturing works, and I'll load that texture into Photoshop. So I'll go through that in the next video, and the next video should be quite a short one. So I'll see you then.